Hello, good afternoon, and welcome at already the third free webinar of Kid Intercultural Professionals. Today I'm accompanied by Els Brouwer of ProJob. She'll introduce herself later, and today's topic is 21st century skills. So, Els.
Well, my name is Els Brouwer. As Edith already mentioned, I work at ProJob. ProJob is a labor market specialist. I call myself the same. And I will tell you shortly something about ProJob. ProJob, House of Careers. Labor market specialists, we have a lot of services. We start with recruitment, our core business, recruitment in the administrative area, but also we pay a lot of attention to development, personal development by coaching, also team coaching, and we have training and workshops. And also we do our placement support. We give HR advice, as you can see. And then last but not least, the part where I work for, company onboarding, ProJob company onboarding. It's a network of business, and we support international companies that migrate to the Netherlands.
All right. And that's actually where we have a connection. Yeah, so people who have joined the first webinar may remember, I'm an HR business partner at Kid Intercultural Professionals, which means that I at times train groups, but most of the time I do consultancy work and I design programs for our corporate clients. And if you look at Kid, we have actually two different departments. We have the not-for-profit and the profit. And the profit is the business units, which is, besides intercultural professionals, also hospitality, because we have this beautiful setting where a lot of events take place. And also we have real estate, because in the building are a lot of startups and companies that focus on the SDGs, and they rent our premises. And the profit of the business units actually flows through the knowledge units, which is set in gender, doing a lot of research and reinforcing gender issues, and health, where they educate a lot of people from, example, Africa in modern health management. Now, today we are using Livestorm, which is new to us, because before we used Zoom, we understand the issues around Zoom as to privacy and security, so we have switched to Livestorm. And let's explain. A lot of things are the same. What you see in your screen is on the left the chat. The chat is very important, because if you don't say anything in the chat, we can't open your microphone and we can't give you the stage. You have the questions, and there's a nice thing about the questions, because if you see a question that you really like and would like to see answered, you can upvote it, so it will come to the top of the question list. And later on, after we finish our presentation, we'll go into the questions. Then during our presentation, we have quite a lot of polls. We will tell you when there is a poll, but you have to click on the poll by yourself to open it and to vote. And you can see who's present, and we have decided that we only show your first names, because we haven't asked you your permission to show other names. Maybe you can take it from here, Els.
Yes, thank you, Edith. Well, first we do a poll.
Yes.
Yeah, and the question is, are you a millennial or not?
All right. We're about halfway.
Yeah.
Yes. And at the moment it looks like 3/5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, you don't have to be a millennial to have millennial skills, do you?
No, not at all. And we're going to get there later on.
Yeah.
And also the way of thinking that millennials do. We took a lot from there as well.
Yeah. So let's see.
I think we have a mixed audience.
Yeah, I think so too. It's about half. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Now, then the question is, of course, does everybody really know what a millennial is and when they were born? let's face the 4 generations on the work floor that we have right now. You can see the baby boomers and the Generation X. They are the oldest generations at this moment. And then we get the Generation Y, the Millennials. And if you are born in 1981, between 1981 and 1994, some say 96, sometimes it changes a bit, then you are a millennial. And we have the Generation Z. But why do we talk about millennials? Well, that is because there's a different view on work for everybody at this moment in this century, and that is highly influenced by the millennials. When the millennials arrived on the work floor, this change began. And they not only influenced our view of work, but also the meaning that we give to it. The biggest difference between millennials and all previous generations is that they grew up with technology. And technology is something else that we are influenced by about our view of work in this century. Another topic is the integration of multiple cultures. And Edith will talk about that later too. Millennials, they are often seen as an idealistic group, that they are more flexible when it comes to work, and also more flexible in changing jobs. So if you have another view on work, then you also have a different need when it comes to work. And these needs, they are the same for every generation at this moment. We took a lot over from the millennials. Yeah. So what we are looking now for in work is fun. And fun, it sounds a bit shallow, but you have to consider that the millennial generation was brought up with the idea that happiness is one of the main goals in life. And if you spend so much time on your work floor, in your work, why don't you bring that happiness to work then? So it became more and more important for everybody, and also being sensibly busy. Edith already taught something about the SDGs, where the kid is also working with, and she will tell something about it later. But we all want to contribute. We all want to matter. And that is also what it's all about. And then developing ourselves. Why is that a need? Not only because we want to, we find it more and more important to be more self-conscious, to be more aware of what you want and what you really desire, what you're longing for. But there's also an urgent need to keep up with all those technology that this century is having and what is constantly changing. So it is an urgent need to be able to learn constantly during your whole life, actually. Well, not only people are changing, also the organization models. And we come from a very traditional model, and that has been there for a long time, and that is all about directive management. There are still some traditional organizations, but you see more and more that we already have come to self-management teams. And self-management teams, they get guidelines, of course, about the goals they have to reach. But the difference is that they are free in deciding how to reach them, how they divide the work within the team. Who is going to do what? Who will take ownership for anything? And then they reach the goals. And that is different. And I think most of the people and the companies are working like that already. Then there was another shift coming, and that was to self-organizing organizations. And it seems to be that the COVID-19 situation that we are in right now forced us already to begin to work like this. It means that you are more individually working, you organize your work completely yourself. And as we see that most of the people are now working at home, you have to organize your own work spot, you have to organize your daily schedule. Maybe you decide to start a bit later or to end a bit later. Of course, you are still belonging to a team, and that is what we actually all like. And that is something that we learn from this situation as well. That's how individual you may be. You also like to go back to your team because you want to belong to a group of people and to the company and be a part of that. That is something that most people really need. Other might decide that they really enjoy working at home and they will stay working at home. So I'm very curious how the situation will be when we all go back to the workplace, if that will change. And I think it does. Then we have the last model that has been formulated already a couple of years ago, but that will take place in this century. And here and there you see it happening already also. And that is self-organization without borders. The world has become transparent. You can work from anywhere. And if you work in a company in Amsterdam, you can still live in New York or somewhere else where you want. You have access to networks that can be shared. It's not all about the central server, but people can share documents through networks in another way too. It also has led to the platforming economy. And a simple example of platforming company, then you all know what we mean, is when you look at Airbnb, then you can see that you can already have access to a taxi company, sorry. Uber is another example, but you have access to the biggest hotel chain when we talk about Airbnb in the whole world, and you can be a part of that. It's all on platform. There's no building that exists, also not for Uber. It's all online. Then we go to the 21st century mind skills, because if you want to work in a different way, if you have to deal with technology, if you have to deal with all the sorry, we had a little technical issue here. If you have to deal with all the generations on the same work floor, then you need other mind skills. You need to build up another mentality, and you must be able to work agile. And what does that mean? Well, we look at that from this point of view. Agile means that you have another way of looking at change. In this century, we will be constantly dealing with changes. And some people are afraid of that. And if you become more self-aware, if you are more positively thinking about what you can offer, that means that you know your own talents, that you know what you're good at, your skills, then your attitude changes also. Your attitude towards change. You will be able to respond to new situations faster, more efficiently, and more accurately. And above all, with pleasure. And that's what we all want. Isn't it, Edith? Yes. So self-awareness, I already said, development, learning, constantly learning, it also helps you to become more agile. And then we talk about century skills. That's more what you really have, are able to perform in. There are a lot of them. And maybe now you expect that we have a whole set of new skills for this century. That's not true. What you will see are skills that you are very familiar with already. But why do they call them the 21st century skills? Because we gave a new meaning to them. We have a different view on it. They mean something else. And we start with creativeness. Creativity is very important. And it's something that people can do, what they are good at, because aware that we are living in a century where artificial intelligence is taking over a lot of our work, a lot of solution, problem solving, etc. But what makes people different, what we can do and what AI can't, is that we can look at problems or new solutions from top down. And artificial intelligence is fed by the information that we put into it, and then it develops itself, but always bottom up. So that is what we can do, and AI can't. Not yet. Then we look at critical thinking. Why is this so important? Well, we get overloaded with information in this century. We have to make choices the whole day through, not only in your private life, but also in your work life. And if you are not a critical thinker, then you can be overwhelmed by everything that comes towards you. You have to make choices, but then you have to be able to have an analysis on things that you know what is really important and what you can skip, and what consequences are what you do when you skip them. So critical thinking is really very important, and also new due to the amount of information that we have to deal with. Then we think about problem-solving thinking. Well, I think I run through this quickly because it's a bit the same as creativeness, but it is very important, and also because, again, we have to deal with technology. Productivity, that's something we knew already for centuries. And usually it was a kind of handcraft. It was about making products, etc. That, of course, there has always been a part of the working people that did more work with their brains thinking. And now we change towards that almost for everybody, because automation is there. They can take over a lot of work that is done in factories, etc. And productivity is all about what you do with your mind, the way you think about solving problems, etc. But how can you measure that? How can you make clear what your output is? That is something that has been asked in this century a lot, and it will be more and more, because it has to be clear what you are doing and what you are producing then, even when it's still in your own mind. And then the communicative abilities. Why is that so important? Well, I think communication is always important, but in this area where we deal with a lot of technology, and you can read a lot also, but we still have the need for personal contact. And the communication that people that people are able to do is not only the communication with your head, but also with your heart. We call it the rational mind and the emotional mind. And the emotional mind, that is what touches us, and that is a communicative skill that becomes more and more important, because we have that need for meaningful relationships. And then collaboration. Well, people work together already for ages and ages and ages. It's the way to survive as well. But what if you have to work with your colleague robot or humanoid? And working together with your computer is already kind of collaboration. It makes it very different. And we have seen now that collaboration is also a challenge when you are all working at home, which is part of the future as well. Mm-hmm. And how do you still feel that you are a part of the team? How do you make that work? That you still have the feeling, me and my colleagues have done the job. So collaboration is more based also on technology and other ways of working. And of course, technology, we already said it, it is one of the influences from this area, and you have to possess technical expertise. And I think that counts for everybody, what kind of work you are doing and in which position you are. To make this all happen, to be able to work with your skills of the 21st century, to be able to work together in a different way, you have to have another attitude. We already talked about the mindset, the mind skills with agile working, but attitude is more about how do you take action. Because the most important attitude for this century is entrepreneurship. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur to work as an entrepreneur. If you are working more and more individually, you have more autonomy in your work, you take more ownership, then you really must be able to work in that way as an entrepreneur. And why is that so very important? Well, when we talk about entrepreneurship, then I think we can fill a new webinar because it's a huge topic. So I have to tell it in short, and you can easily say is that you take action to keep the company safe and also successful. So this action is really required. And that you think in terms of opportunities instead of in obstacles. In short, you can define it like that. Then we come to the last part that I'm going to tell you, because Edith is going to tell a lot of other things. The 21st century Dutch work culture. Well, you may ask, can we still talk about the Dutch work culture? Because when Edith will talk about all those different cultures that we are having here, and especially in Amsterdam, I think we talk about 180 different cultures, nationalities that are also working here. Well, it makes it all more exciting, and but also a more difficult way of working sometimes together to find a way. And still we talk about the Dutch culture, and that is, and then I come back to where I started with, the influence that the millennials had, the needs that we need to have, the longing for how we want to see work, how we want to look at work. In the Netherlands, it has been a long time so that we thought that you work because you have to. And now we think, okay, we want to work also because we feel happiness on the work floor. That's what we experience. We like to work with our colleagues. We are proud of what we're doing. So that makes it really different. And then we come to these 5 conclusions that we want the Dutch work culture to be meaningfulness, personal growth is very important, autonomy, relationships are very valuable, and vitality, because we have to work longer and longer and longer.
Okay, thank you, Els. Actually, let's do a poll, because I'm curious in our audience. Please open the poll and vote, because we are curious why you work. Do you work in the traditional way because you need income? Or are you working because you love what you do, or is it a bit of both? All right, and you see that the majority seems to choose a bit of both, and there are slightly more people that still work to generate an income rather than that they love what they're doing. So that's quite interesting, because we see this shift now that people are looking for meaningfulness, for relationships, for individual development and personal growth. We see that they have a bit of both, and actually that's reflected in our audience, because 77% agrees on that. Now, actually that seems to be in sync with the SDGs. Now at KIT, we are a social development goal ambassador, and we have the SDG house. And actually the meaningfulness that a lot of people are seeking in their job is also reflected in these SDGs. But of course, it's culturally decided. I already saw a question of somebody who asked, can you actually distinguish between millennials in different cultures? Yes, I think you do, because you see culture has layers. In the Netherlands, the Dutch work culture we just talked about is typical national culture, and it used to be the traditional way, but it's shifting. But people primarily were working because that's the way things were. The cookie was crumbling, and you needed the income. Now, but something is happening. This is indeed the question. I see. I wonder whether millennials from other regions in the world have different values, and the West is often called post-materialistic. So millennials wanting to focus on self-development, making a difference, etc., makes sense. Yes, this is what we see in the West, but I don't think you can generate with these millennials and their values across the globe, because what we see in countries in Asia, for example, is that there is no social security like we have here, taking care of the elderly, providing healthcare for elderly. So those millennials very often cannot even buy their own home and start their family, because there is a lack of care for the generation above them, and they have to actually look after their parents, which influences how they shape their 21st century skills. But they do find solutions to this with their 21st century skills, but in a different way indeed. All right, so then you also have professional cultures, because it makes a difference whether you work in IT, in healthcare, maybe the advertising industry, in fashion, or in the oil industry. So these are typical cultures too. And then again, you can have the corporate culture, which can be different with one company producing fruit juice or whatever, and another company producing fruit juice. They can have different values. As a matter of fact, our other trainer, Simone, explained about corporate values and how they translate in different intercultural settings in the last webinar. And then, of course, you have your individual makeup and culture. How were you brought up? Where were you brought up? Were you exposed to many different situations or not? So culture has a lot of layers, and you need to realize that culture, besides only relating to nationality, also changes. We talked about the Dutch work culture, how it changes over years, and that people are not only working to get a salary, but also to develop themselves and to contribute something meaningful to society and to make it a better world. And you can see that the culture is also community, because, for example, the people that work very hard on realizing the SDGs could also be seen like a group that has its own specific culture. Now, if we look at the Dutch Polder model, as a matter of fact, this originated because we had to fight the water, right? So people with different interests had one thing in common. They all needed to fight the water and keep the water outside our dikes. So that's how the Polder model actually originated. And they had a shared interest. So they knew how to cooperate on those things where they could really help one another and reinforce one another. So what you see here, in a way, in the Polder model, we already saw 21st century skills that lead to success, because they were building relationships, they were looking for innovation, they kept their own autonomy, which is considered very important as a 21st century skill, but still they could work this out together. And it has somehow become like an export product, our Polder model. And like you explained, Els, the work-life balance in the Netherlands, actually for new arrivals in the Netherlands from a different background, originally it was quite difficult, because they seemed to make a very clear distinction between their work life and their private life. Now we see this shifting, because people want to be more meaningful, and they not only work for salary anymore, they seem to build really friendly relationships at work. So let's check with our audience. What do you seek most in your job? Please all open the poll and find what you need most in your job. And indeed, we see meaningfulness and personal growth, relationships, autonomy, yes. Yeah. Ooh, vitality is only very small percentage.
It's not very popular.
No, not very popular. But we see that the meaningfulness is really leading the pack with 25% of the votes. And the second, actually, it's about the same, personal growth and relationships. So we see personal growth is considered more important. So we see that this is really shifting.
Really. Yeah.
So you don't need to be a millennial in age to apply 21st century skills and become successful in this changing world. Now, we see this a lot in startups. Actually, in the basement of our building, I already mentioned our real estate, we have Impact Hub, which is like all the startups and individual freelancers working there. And it's so different. It's vibrant. People work there on sofas. They have lunch together. They pay a lot of attention to making food together. They have dinners together. They play ping pong while they work. You know, it's a very different way of working, combining the fun and combining the relationships and the personal growth all together in their job. And now you can see, because this is actually what we have always been telling expats, you know, because expats, they mix their professional life with their private life, and they have become successful expats because they have this open-mindedness, because they have the ability to build relationships and to mix their professional life with their private life. And this also provides very funny crossovers. So people find different solutions. Let's see how many of our audience have international experience. Can you open the poll again, please? Because we have made a little poll because we're curious. Have you ever worked outside your own country? We see that quite a lot of people have worked for more than a year in another country than their country of origin, and only very few have not yet worked outside their home country. And actually 14% has done an international traineeship. So we have quite a lot of international experience here already. Oh, sorry, not 25% has done international traineeship. And I cannot really read it. 63% has worked for more than a year in another country. Now you see, because at KIT, we always teach people to be open-minded and to be curious. Now, we have said before that the critical thinking is a typical millennial thing and a 21st century skill. And because of the critical thinking, still some traditional perception in the workplace, sometimes the millennials are seen as too critical. But actually, they're only trying to understand why you ask them to do this in this way. They want to understand your purpose, yeah? And the questioning is only because they want to understand and they want to get to the heart of the matter. And the most important thing, which is really an intercultural skill, is that they try to check if the way they perceive your message is correct or not. So that's very important because that's what makes internationals successful in a different environment. So actually, it's just the other side of the coin. And what may be a piece of cake to you and me, and very logical because we grew up in this country and that's the way we've done it forever, and maybe an eye-opener to somebody else who comes from a very different background. And at the same time, we have to keep the open mind because what they see as a solution, while we're trying to find a solution and breaking our head and can't find the way out, then they may have an eye-opener for us because they look at it from a very different angle. And this open-minded curiosity makes what makes people innovative, and why you can find the crossovers and solutions. Now, let's look at the generations, because you mentioned the generations very early on. We mentioned the critical mind of millennials, and that is actually a skill. But if you look at the traditional organizations, then the seniors may not really appreciate this critical questioning by the youngers, whereas I pointed out that critical thinking and questioning is a 21st century skill. And actually, the senior generation could also apply their critical thinking and ask the juniors why they are asking them these questions. And you can build a bridge. And actually, I feel that in these Corona times, in a way, the younger generations have shown the seniors how to find solutions and to take care of the people that couldn't find solutions themselves. And it seems that actually their image has been shifted positively, because now it seems that the technical skills and the ability to build networks in no time in the virtual world and to generate capacity and acting power built on the experience from the senior generations had led to very nice, meaningful solutions in helping each other in this COVID time, because we're really looking at what does the other need. So we have another poll, because like you said, in this Corona time, we've all been thrown into deep water. And please open the poll, because we're curious now that everybody is working from home. Who is looking forward to go back to the office? Well, we see quite a lot of people who really like working from home. And maybe we should have added a third option to this question, you know, like, I like it both, because it seems that people have a problem to choose between the two. It's half-half, yeah?
And I think it's going that way.
I think so too.
Half-half.
I think so. I think people are shifting, because actually, I think it was Lisa Lott who had a question about this too. Huh? I don't remember. What was her question? I saw it somewhere. Never mind. We'll get to that later. Yeah. Never mind. Because we see a shift. Yeah. Before, internationals were like mid-career people, and they had quite an established life, and they had a good income, and they were kind of pampered when they went to a different destination. Nowadays, you have the digital nomads, and they don't need anything. Right? They have very low expenses, and they can work from anywhere, like you said. They can be in New York working for a company in Amsterdam or whatever, and they know how to generate capacity in the virtual world and support. You know, whereas the older generation and the traditional internationals even used to get a COLA, which is a cost of living account, because it was so-called inconvenient to live in a different culture and country, so they were compensated. Nowadays, the digital nomads, they see the experience of working in a different culture and getting to know these other ways of solving issues as the most important benefit of the way of working. So let me see. So here we get back to the personal growth. Yeah, because it's all in the experience. And this is also what you indicated with the different shifts in the organization structure, because I really see that people go for the experience and they don't want to be limited by corporate policy. Yeah, they don't want that. And also you can see that Corona is maybe a reset of the way we work. So we're very curious. But whatever way you look at it, we believe that the key to success is mutual trust. And actually, all our programs are focusing on self-awareness. You already mentioned it, because if you know yourself, you also know what you may evoke from other people, and you may actually be able to anticipate within a certain intercultural context what this will do with the feeling and the experience of the other people. And since the 21st century skill is to take care of other people and to contribute positively to society, you also need to take responsibility to what you evoke from others. So we always advise people to stay curious, have a critical mind, 21st century skill, and also to stay healthy and energetic. This vitality, we haven't really talked that much about it, but it's a true 21st century skill to take care of that. We think that Mr. Covey was very right to say, please first investigate show interest in the other people and try to understand where they're coming from before you want to be understood where you're coming from. Try to understand other people's needs before you want your needs to be understood. And if you do that, then you will see that the open-mindedness and all the things that come with success and are related to the 21st century skills that Els already listed. Now, I think that's about what we wanted to share, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left, but before we go to the questions, I'd like to mention that our next webinar will be on May 20th, and it will be done by Joke Bruinzeel. And it's about intercultural challenges in virtual leadership. And Joke is a very experienced intercultural trainer, and she's also a lecturer. So please try to register again. And you can always find the details of Els and ProJob, all my details and Kit's details in the recording. And after this webinar, we will also send you a link to the recording, so don't worry about that. Now, we have seen questions. Let's see, guys, this is the last moment you have an opportunity to upvote questions. So, Joe, let me see, have you upvoted questions? Let me see. In a century of increased complexity, I was wondering your opinion with regard to specialists and generalists. Well, do you want to answer that, Els, or you want?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
exactly.
Because actually,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really an interesting question, and I didn't think about this before. You don't hear much about it. What we will go to, I think that, well, when you think about that, we are living in a century that is all about development. You keep on developing. So one specialism is not something that you will do for life. So learning constantly, building up multiple specialisms, I think, maybe from the same basis, that could be also a thing. But I think due to the constant learning, you will become also a bit of a generalist, that you are able to do more than just one specialism. But I think that, that because technology is the basis of a lot of work in the future, that we will all become a kind of specialist in that field also. Not that you will be an architecture of websites, or that might be too much for people, but that you are able to handle technology in the field that you are working in the best way.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that there will always be specialists like surgeons, brain surgeons, aerospace engineers, whatever. But they cannot be successful without developing the 21st century skills, because they will actually be so focused on their specialism that they need the support in a broader perspective from others. So they will need to be able to build relationships, and they will need to be open-minded and curious. And also, I think if their specialism doesn't contribute to society and a better society, I'm not sure if they will get a platform to actually show their expertise.
Yeah, that's also the case. But well, when we talk about specialists, you mentioned surgeons, doctors, etc. Well, a lot of that work can be taken over by robots and as well. So I think they will do a lot of other things too. Based on technology.
I think we can have one last question. Let me see. Entrepreneurial attitude. Jules Schlieger. Yes. If you say that we should have an entrepreneurial attitude, I wonder how you suggest building that kind of an attitude, becoming more assertive than what might come natural to yourself.
yeah, you can always develop such an attitude. I'm pretty sure of that. It's all about being aware of what is needed and becoming more self-awareness, because also here, if you are more self-conscious, if you are pretty convinced that you can contribute, that you know where your talents lie, what you are competent in, then assertiveness and not being afraid to undertake action, even if you don't know what the outcome will be, so you take a risk maybe, then you will be more assertive too. I'm pretty sure of that. But what I already said, well, when you talk about entrepreneurship, you can almost fill a new webinar, and maybe also how you develop that, because it is really a huge topic. And but also, I'm sure you can learn that.
Yeah, and also entrepreneurship is, again, like millennials, in a different cultural context. Entrepreneurship looks differently. As a matter of fact, what I told you about Impact Hub and how they work, all these independent consultants and whatever, and the small startup companies in the basement of our office, that really reminds me of what I've seen in Asia in home industries, because you can be an entrepreneur at many, many levels. Do we have any live questions in the chat? Let me check. Let me see, because then we have to wrap it up, because we don't want to take more of your time than we anticipated. Let me see. I don't really see. I like 50%, and yeah. No. Actually, we have attendance from Mexico, Nigeria. Wonderful. Hello, Anna. Hello, Gideon. No, but I don't see any specific questions. Hola. Let me see. Oh, Janneke. Hello, Janneke. That's a long time ago that I saw you. You have a lot of international experience. Any questions? No? Then maybe we have to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, being an expat. Anna has a question. Is being an expat considered as culture in itself? Yeah, because that's one of those groups. You remember I had the slide with all the layers in culture, and actually being an expat, when you're at a certain location and you have a group of expats, it's like a community, and a community can have its own cultural values. Yeah, that might be. Yeah. Okay. Charlene has a very interesting question. Let's put it up on the screen. Because, Charlene, you think that the post-coronavirus period forced people to become more national limited. People need to communicate by using very exact wording that will be varied by the different level of language skill set. Do you oversee the challenge? I'm not sure what you think. Maybe we can, maybe if you go to the chat, Charlene, we can open your microphone and you can elaborate a bit what your question is exactly, because I'm not sure.
Because I noticed that the people, since it now more and more using the digital conference, and need people, even though they they work together with all the different cultural people, they need to be very precise for the way they're talking, the wording they're using. Yeah. But I know some of the language have its own interpretation by the cultural differences. So what you see, that will be also the challenge in 21st century, that people have to enhance their language level in order to precisely communicate, or you think that they can using other way, either by sign or either by pictures or by other artificial solution, in order to have cross-border communication better.
Well, actually, this is a topic on its own, and next webinar will be conducted by Joke, and Joke will actually go into issues with remote leadership, and indeed what happens if you miss out on body language because you're on camera, and how does it influence your communication. So Joke will certainly address some of these things too. And it's topic in its own actually.
And especially when that's intercultural, what you're saying, that really is a challenge.
Because I recently realized when I'm talking to the other side in America, and then they kind of like, I don't really know what you're talking.
Right.
And typing is definitely not a strength.
And especially when everybody is speaking in his second or maybe even third language. That's making it more complicated too. Right. Yeah. Okay. But I think Joke will address this next time too. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not sure which. Maybe you can email your question again to me, and we will certainly answer it then, because we're running out of time, and I think we have to wrap it up now. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. We're very happy to have had you here. We're really pleased to see that so many people attend our webinars, and we really look forward to welcoming you again on May the 20th for Joke Brunsell's webinar on leadership in this remote setting. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.